Today, we're talking with Natalia Quintero, head of consulting at Every, where she helps companies like private equity firms, hedge funds, and media organizations move beyond surface level AI efforts and embedded the technology directly into daily workflows. Drawing on her background across finance, public innovation, and venture, Natalia brings a systems level view to AI adoption, one grounded in how work actually gets done. Natalia, welcome to Just Curious.
Thanks, Stu. Great to be here.
What is Every? And what does it mean to be a multimodal media company that also consults on AI?
Yeah. So every started out about 5 years ago, and we do three things. We we write about AI. We build AI products, and then we share the best things that we learn across those two dimensions with other clients through our consulting business. And the first part of every is the media company. That's how we started out. We write about AI and really about how people are using it, how companies are using it, and what are the most practical, valuable ways in which people are getting value out of AI. From there, we evolved to building AI native companies. We wanted to really explore where rubber hits the road and how you could be using these really powerful tools to build companies. And so we decided to go and build our own kind of product studio. We now have 5 companies that we've incubated in-house, one of which is fully spun out. And we take all of the learnings, as I mentioned, and we share them with, a variety of clients that come to us and are ready to kind of go on their AI adoption journey. So that's what it means to be at Every. It means to be at the forefront of AI and to be really excited to help other companies and people explore how AI can be helpful to them.
I want to follow up on that last point. You said that you are head of consulting, but Every aren't consultants, they're practitioners. What does that look like in practice when you're helping your clients adopt AI?
I mean, it means that we don't AI is all we do. It's every day, everything we do is testing new models, all of the internal kind of workflows and processes that we have at Every. We operate in an AI first way. So, for example, a few months ago, we decided to hire an AI ops manager. And this is someone who just ensures that we are using AI in the most compelling and valuable ways internally. So, AI is really all we do. When we say that we're not consultants, we're practitioners, it means that we are using these tools at the cutting edge in much the same way that we want to see our clients using those tools. So consulting it's not sort of like a theoretical exercise for us. We rely on AI to build and run the companies that we operate via our our product studio. And so consulting is just an extension of what we do every day in running the business that we rely on.
Yeah. When it comes to adoption of AI, you've said that most companies don't lack awareness of that need. They lack, I guess, application. What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, it really just means that I think we all could use a little bit more efficiency. And AI has this really great promise of being helpful in that particular end and helping us do more or do better work. And I think where both individuals and companies struggle is in really figuring out what exactly that means to them and their workflows. So, what we're able to do when we're working with teams or individuals is we're able to pinpoint all of the areas where they could be using AI and then really kind of hone in on the areas where it would be most valuable for them and for us to focus on and to develop tools and workflows that they can get real leverage out of, right? It doesn't really matter if you have great prompting skills or if your projects are structured in a really beautiful way. If you're not alleviating pain points that enable you to do the work that you want to do, it's not really valuable. So we just want you to do more of what you care about and to do it better and faster and for AI to do that for you.
And what does that process look like when you are helping them identify those problems that can be solved? Where do you typically start?
We started in discovery. So in order for AI to be helpful to anyone, that we need a lot of context, and AI needs a lot of context to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve and how you define excellence and how you would go about achieving that particular thing. So we start by learning about what your goals are as an organization, right? Like, what is the North Star that you're collectively working towards? We then partner with the teams that we're going to be training and then really ask them how they go about achieving their collective goal that ladders up to that broader goal. And then really understanding what are kind of like the core workflows that they rely on to reach that goal. And within those workflows, where there are opportunities for AI to be helpful. And so the first phase of our work is just really learning and really deeply understanding that any work that we will do is one going to be oriented around a goal and a priority that we know the team cares about and is valuable to them. And two, that we are going to focus on AI skills, adoptions, tooling that is going to give them direct value in solving for something that they're already spending time on and is a pain point to them because this is something that they're doing regularly every day, every month, every week, and it's a painful sort of it's a pain point, right? It's a painful sort of time expenditure. So we start out all projects by just kind of capturing that information and then building essentially an AI roadmap of here are all of the opportunities that we surfaced that for which AI could be meaningful and relevant. And then we work with our clients to decide which of these do you want to prioritize and pursue. And based on that conversation, we then build out essentially kind of like a training plan where we upskill each of the teams that we're working with to solve the specific pain points that we identified in the conversations that we had and do so via usually the LLM that they're working with or via kind of like the workflows that they're solving.
Do organizations usually come to you with a desire to train their business unit or their functional unit or their organization, or do they come with a problem that they want to solve that you help them solve while also training the organization to use the technology?
That's an interesting question. I would say most companies come to us looking to maybe build something. I would say maybe there's sort of two answers. There's companies that come to us and they say, we want our team to be using AI, and so we want to build something, or sort of have some sort of like interface that solves like a pain point for them. And then we also have teams that say, hey, we just rolled out, sort of Anthropic or Claude or ChatGPT to the entire organization. And we have a sense that people aren't actually using it really well. And so those tend to be kind of like the two broader conversations that we're having. I would say for the first type of conversation, what we see is there's this kind of big challenge with AI that there's so many things that you could do. You really could build any product or solve any pain point now faster than ever. But there's this huge risk in building something that you actually don't need and doing a lot of that. And I think we really try to recommend to clients or anyone that we speak to that before you go about trying to build a product that you're not sure is really the pain point that would be most valuable to address, you really outline where there is both low hanging fruit and high impact AI opportunities. And then seeing how your team uses the tools that are available to them and where they are actually getting value out of those tools, decide where to go next. So, that's kind of our response to the first type of conversation that we have. And then for the second, where there's like the classic, like we rolled out AI tooling to everyone at the company. Um, I would say there's still sort of like a misunderstanding on the level of depth that you have to go into to get value out of AI. We've all had like a magical experience with AI, and I think we've all had a moment where we've asked it to do something and it's just totally sucked. And the reality about getting value out of AI is that it takes quite a bit of effort. It takes quite a lot of effort actually to create a prompt and kind of like a project structure that solves a major pain point for you. And so, in order for us to do that effectively, we're going to need to work together and get a lot of context and files and documents and structure that into a really big sort of like super prompt that solves a pain point. And we're going to like, it's going to be iterative, right? We're going to try that a few different ways. And when we find something that works, then we're going to have something that the team can really rely on. But there's this misconception with AI that you can kind of just roll out ChatGPT to everyone on your team, and all of a sudden there's going to be these like massive efficiencies that are gained, when the reality is that you actually kind of have to build out the skill of using AI, essentially train the AI agents or the prompts that you want to use to have sufficient context and instructions and information about what you want to get done and what excellence means for your team. And then there's an iterative process in testing those tools and making sure that they are effective at accomplishing those goals. And so we work with those clients to kind of make sure that we can go through that process and that they really understand that by adopting AI, it's not kind of like a new tech tool that everyone has access to, but it's essentially kind of a totally transformative change where now everyone at your organization is a manager of AI. And there are sort of great opportunities, but also big responsibilities that come with that role. And so we want to make sure that people understand what that role means and that they're able to be good managers to the AI tools that they have access to.
And I guess related, you said that adoption only happens when people see it solve actual problems. I love that framing. I hate, honestly, the dialogue about like AI adoption because, to your point, you just drop like AI on someone's lap and they don't know what to do with it, or it's not solving a problem. I'm not going to use it. And they're certainly not going to use it effectively. What makes a good problem for AI to solve?
It's pretty simple. It needs to be repeatable. So it needs to be something that well, first of all, it needs to be something that you can explain, right? A good problem that AI can solve is a problem that you can explain and solve yourself as if you were explaining kind of like to an intern, right? Like if you hired a really brilliant intern kind of off the street and you needed a problem solved, this needs to be a problem that you could explain very well to that intern and that you would expect an intern to be able to kind of like solve for you, or like a brilliant chief of staff to solve for you. So one, can you explain what the problem is? And can you explain the solution to that problem with kind of context and information around what it means to solve that problem with excellence and with like the specific steps, kind of like procedurally as you would think about solving that problem? And can you direct, say, this chief of staff to the set of resources that they would need access to in order to kind of do that task? So what's a great sort of sort of challenge or use case for AI? Is it something that you can explain? Is it something that you can kind of give context and resources around? Is it repeatable, right? Like, is it something for which you can check the output, and you checking the output of that is still, there's an ROI component, right? Like if it's going to be super tedious for you to like check the output that you're getting from AI, like let's say like it's like 1,000 rows that you're like uploading and you're asking it to create another 1,000 rows. It's up to you to always be a good manager to AI and to check the caliber of the work that you're getting from AI. So are you making a good trade-off in asking it to accomplish a task that you could reasonably supervise and get sort of quality outputs from? So is there kind of like a quality check? And then I would say that the last thing is any usage of AI that will really give you sort of leverage or value is something that you can improve over time, and that you can kind of like continue and test and build on. So is this a workflow that you could really delegate and rely on, and that you have time to sort of like step up and continue to manage? Because, again, as I said, there's this misconception that once you set up maybe a prompt or an agent, that you could just kind of let it run. But the reality is that you are now responsible for both the prompt, the agent, and the outcomes of that. So are you prepared to basically now be checking the work and the output of that? And is the ROI that you're getting from that sort of experience worth your time, right? Are you making a good decision around picking a problem that you're solving that you've spent 2 hours sort of like setting up this prompt or this project or this structure, and it's going to save you at least 2 hours, if not hopefully significantly more on a regular basis, right? You don't want to automate or use AI to solve something that it actually takes you 5 minutes or 30 minutes to do. So I think it's thinking about all of these different elements, but at the core, it's repeatability, checking the quality of the outputs, having really good instructions, and then making sure that you really have context. And essentially, kind of like SOP is like a standard operating procedure that you can hand off to train and test if you could really delegate a task to AI.
Yeah. And how do you find those problems? And are there questions that you ask that are great at teasing out problems that are good for AI to solve?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, one of the easiest sort of maybe questions is, in these discovery conversations that we do, it's, if you did hire an intern tomorrow that could help you with the things that you have on your plate, what would be the three highest value tasks that you would kind of think to train your intern to kind of accomplish for you? And so that's not a perfect way to go about it, but I think you start to get a sense for what are like the tedious, repetitive, high value tasks that you could get a really smart person to accomplish if you invest the time in training them to do that. There's a very similar sort of psychology to them doing the same thing with AI.
Yeah. And who do you typically engage with within one of these client organizations? Who should be leading this effort on the client side?
So, our perspective is that AI, unlike other technology, should really come from the top. Uh, there's a lot of organizations where there's teams that are using it. There's sort of like individuals scattered across the organization that are getting a lot of value out of AI, kind of like your typical bell curve power users. But in order to get value out of AI at an organizational level, you need a coordinated approach and you need leadership that understands what is the kind of value that you can be getting out of these tools, which means that you need leadership that is really engaged and understands just how transformative these tools are. There's a few examples of clients that we've seen do this really well. I think notably, Will, CEO of Walleye, has been an exceptional leader in sort of understanding that sort of mental paradigm that we all experienced at some point in the last 2 years, and then really choosing to have the organization, in this case Walleye, make a take a coordinated approach to finding where there are opportunities to get value out of AI and making sure that every single person at the organization is has an opportunity to see that value, replicate that value for themselves, and then kind of get scale from that. And when you see leadership have that light bulb moment and then generate an environment where there is a coordinated approach to getting value out of I think that's where you see magic happen.
Great. And there's a great interview with Walleye on Spotify and on YouTube, Dan and AI and I. So anyone who's listening to this who wants to check that out, go check it out. What if the leader is interested in AI and the organization's interested, but isn't actively using the technology and doesn't really know what it's capable of? What do you do then?
If an organization hasn't really been using AI, but they're interested in sort of
Someone comes
getting
to you and they say, "Hey, like, we really think there's an opportunity to use AI. I haven't really played around with it yet. I think it could be like transformative." Do you turn them away, or can you work with the leader to get them sort of, up the curve or whatever?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think in some ways those are the most fun clients to work with. Absolutely. I There are so many magic light bulb moments that happen early on when you are, just getting familiar with how powerful these tools are. And if a team has not started using AI in a coordinated, even playful way, there are just so many magic moments early on where you could start to see the team sort of see all of the different applications. And I would say it's especially cool when a company gets to experience that together and early on. So 100%. I mean, so long as there is an appetite and an aperture to rethinking workflows and getting teams to be on these platforms and then work together to get leverage out of them, I think the magic is totally there.
Great. I'd love to walk through an example of how Every works. You shared a case study with me, a private equity firm that you worked with. Tell me a little bit about the problem that they came to you with.
Yeah, so this was one of our very first clients early on. This is a this is a firm that was interested in actually doing something much like what we just talked about, right? Did have access to a variety of AI tools, and they were seeing that while there were sort of disparate approaches to using the tools, there wasn't sort of like a coordinated approach that was making it so that everyone on the team was getting kind of consistent value. And so the first thing that we did is, of course, just talk to the different teams to understand what they were doing and what their goals were, and kind of learn about the ways in which they were already using AI and how they wish they could be using it. Out of that set of conversations, we identified, in this case, it was for the investment team in particular, that they had a pretty consistent way in which they were using internal notes basically and internal sort of research to create like a V1 uh, idea or set of questions around like a new thesis or like a new company that they were exploring. And then that thesis would go into a memo that would eventually go to the rest of the investment team. And so we built out a bunch of workflows for them, but one of my favorite ones that we delivered was basically getting all of the rich data that they had internally to help inform a set of questions that could help an investor sort of refine their thinking around a deal that they were looking at in a particular sector. So to kind of like refine their thinking and stress test how they were thinking about a particular company or about like a particular industry, and then using the rich sort of internal private data that they had to create like a V1 memo that they could then take to the rest of their partners and say, hey, this is a new opportunity that I'm testing. Here's all of the relevant data that we have internally for how we've thought about this before and why it could make sense for us to pursue this or explore this. It made it so that basically the amount of companies that they could really think critically on and the kind of conversations they could have internally were richer and more interesting, because we went from being like a very sort of like lonely experience of you identify a company that you're interested in, you have like so many incredible resources within the firm that you could be pulling from or looking at, or data that you should be considering sort of swifting through and doing that manually, to having sort of like a company that you're looking at in a thesis, being able to do a lot of preliminary research with an AI workflow that understands who you are, what you do, how you think about this industry kind of like more broadly, and if it fits into the thesis that your company has. And then to add to that the rich repository of information that your firm has collected over the years that it's existed, to really formulate if there's a there for that team to pursue that opportunity. So that was one of like the very early on projects that we worked on. It's been a foundational project for us understanding specifically how private equity firms work, but also the sort of fertile ground that there is for more investment firms to get value out of AI. And it's actually something similar that we're doing now with another firm. But each firm has a slightly different process for how they go about the thesis formation, say, for example, and how their data lives and where they extract rich and valuable insights from their internal data, and just helping people think more critically and find more interesting insights from the data that they have access to. I think it's just like a really fun project to work on, and value to create for the investors on a team.
What did you build that on? What was the sort of tech stack that enabled that AI workflow?
So, for us, we're big believers that your horizontal LLM is the most underutilized and under-leveraged tool at your organization. So if your team has already rolled out ChatGPT or Claude over and over again, we find that most teams are severely underutilizing it. And a lot of the workflows that we build for teams are basically live within ChatGPT, with a mix of, it being GPTs or shared projects or scheduled tasks. And every week we see new things coming out that make that experience richer and richer. Today the browser launched, and we're excited to see how
Yeah.
different that is. But our experience has been that the easier you make it for people to feel ownership of and understand how they can update a prompt to create new tooling and resources for them in the context of ChatGPT, the more leverage you can actually get for individuals and a whole team. So a lot of our solutions really live in the LLM that our clients are using, that the teams are using. Oftentimes that's ChatGPT, and it's basically structured so that it's incredibly easy to use, but also incredibly effective.
You mentioned earlier the sort of iterative nature of prompt development or GPT development. What does that look like in practice? So you go in, you ask a bunch of questions, you identify some opportunities to build solutions to make workflows more efficient. You come out with a V1 of your GPT. How do you take that V1? What does the process look like between that V1 of the GPT and what ultimately they're using at the end of the project?
It varies a lot. I mean, early on, we are basically creating a prompt and then asking, for we call it them AI champions. These are kind of like our liaisons at the firms that we're working with. We're asking for them to like run it and test it and then see where there are sharp edges around that prompt, where it breaks or it stops being valuable or it's actually not solving the problem that we thought we were solving. We get feedback from there. We see what context might be missing or what might be missing about the prompt in order to solve for those things or to make it richer. We go and improve it to solve for those things. And then we test it a few times, basically, to make sure that the end product is exactly what we were hoping it would deliver. So that's what we mean by it being iterative is we give it a go. Oftentimes, the prompts when we start out are 85% of the way there, but it's really that last 15% that makes a huge difference in it either being valuable to someone or not being valuable is if when you're reaching for that tool, it's solving the specific need that you have. And so that's what we're trying to solve for when we're going back and forth and tweaking it.
And then what does the training look like? You're working with the AI champions to identify like opportunities to refine that GPT. There are many more people on the team who can get value from this. You don't just like give it to them. What does the kind of training look like?
So our training is it's functional. So it's team by team. So anytime that we're training a team, we're training, say, the marketing team or the compliance team or the legal team. And so depending on the company, it may be the case that we actually had a client recently where they said, we don't want everyone to see kind of like the prompts behind the scenes. It's just too much. No one has time for that. We just want kind of like the resource available to everyone on the team. And so in that case, we will just work with a core set of the AI champions. We will train and empower them to have the kind of like all of the resources, skills, and information that they need to kind of manage those tools. And then everyone else will basically kind of just get trained on using those tools. But I would say most of the time, we're working with teams that really deeply want to understand how they themselves could be getting value out of these tools. So when we're working, say, with a compliance team, we will come in giving them a prompt or say a GPT, for example, to say something very simple that again solves a pain point that we know that they have. And then we will explain to them how we built out that prompt and that tool in order to solve that pain point for them. We will make sure that they can use it and know how to use it. So there's a lot of hands on time for them to see how it's structured, see how to use it. But what we really hope people get out of these conversations is that they have the skills to just build more of this themselves. So we kind of want to make ourselves obsolete and we want to continue to help people where they don't understand how they can be using, kind of AI. But our goal is for really people to feel empowered to be experts in using these tools coming out of the sessions.
Yeah, you mentioned working with teams to solve problems. What's your take on the rush to stand up AI labs or centers of excellence versus like working with line level teams to solve specific problems?
You mean when organizations sort of like build out like internal AI task forces?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the future, I hope more organizations start to think about having a centralized and coordinated group of people that are responsible for the AI initiatives at that company. And I think the solutions need to be functional. They do have to be specific to each team. So So I do think in the future there are just going to be more roles where there are sort of like, I don't want to think of them as centers of excellence. That sounds kind of lame, but I really think of them as kind of people who are really excited about uh making sure that when there is someone somewhere in the company that has built a tool for themselves that they're getting real value out of, whoever that is, that is being highlighted as an opportunity for other teams for which that tool might be relevant. And then you really multiply the impact of that tool times the number of other team members that could potentially be benefiting from it. And so this is where I say that there really does need to be a coordinated approach to AI. Oftentimes when we're working with a client, we will come in and do that to some extent. But what we want to start to help shape by nominating AI champions and having people who are responsible for the output of their team and who are sharing that information across teams is we want to start creating that dynamic internally where people see opportunities, share those opportunities, and then everyone benefits from them. So I guess to answer your question, in the future, I hope that there are more coordinated, sort of centralized approaches to how a company is thinking about AI and supporting internal AI initiatives. And I think there's plenty of opportunity, and most of the opportunity actually lives in solving function specific challenges.
As we come to a close, I'd love to ask you some questions that solicit advice for people listening. The first would be for teams that are just getting started. What's your like go-to first move for them to build some momentum?
For teams that are just getting started, I would say if you start out and before you go and just play with AI, which we very much want to encourage, if you think about what the tedious, painful tasks are for you, and then you go and have a conversation with your kind of enterprise provisioned AI tool, and then ask it how it could help you in addressing those specific tasks. I think that would be a good sort of starting point because, as I mentioned, you want to start solving for things that you actually need support on. And while we want to encourage people to just play on AI, we want people to get real value out of it too. So if you think about what your real needs are and then use AI to help you think about how it can help you address those needs, I would say that that's a fantastic starting point.
Great. And I guess conversely, what's something you see clients doing that they should not be doing?
I think as I mentioned earlier, it's so easy to it's easier than ever to build products, and also to buy the AI product du jour that sounds like it's going to solve all of your, all of your data problems, or kind of like whatever sort of, solution says like it's going to, do RAG methodology to surface the answers that we know, whatever. I think the biggest challenges that we're seeing companies run into is one, building products they actually don't need and that don't solve either a challenge that a customer has or that the internal team has. Or two, buying a bunch of AI products or a set of AI products that are promising to do something specific that really a lot of the time the team is either under leveraging or they could be using an enterprise tool, an enterprise LLM tool to support them on. So I would really start with Claude or ChatGPT. Make sure your team really knows how to get value out of those tools, really understands what the limits are of those tools. And then if there are additional tools on top of that or additional products on top of that to build, you go from there.
Awesome. Last question. Who should reach out to Natalia and Every? Like what is a great client for you?
Yeah, great clients for us are teams that are usually they're enterprise teams. We work with technology companies, really big technology companies, private equity firms, hedge funds, that are ready to, as an organization, make that pivot into AI adoption and are ready and prepared to do kind of a company wide approach and build a roadmap and execute that roadmap for the entire team. We love the clients that we work with. We go deep with a few clients every year. And we're excited to support more companies that are ready to make that transition.
Awesome. Natalia, thank you for coming on Just Curious.
Thanks, too. It's good to see you.